Okay, so we're going to have a discussion this morning. I was watching Dana Carvey's Church Lady. I'm going to set this down for a minute. I don't know where to set it. I feel like it's too close to my face. We're hiding it. Okay, so shut the tent flaps. We don't want intruders. Okay, so I was watching, long story, but I have a long history as a director. And although I do not have a claim, I'm what you would call a shadow director. All right. So, what does that mean? That means that I'm not saying, how do I say? I feel like credentials as a director before I tell you my suggestions for Dana Carvey. For Dana Carvey. When I was a child, my mother and my father, my mom was tested as a narcissist in official testing and is in the top 1%. My father, sociopath, psychopath. These two used to have me people watch and study people. And one of the things that I was actually, and still to this day, I'm proud of my mom about, is that she never paid any child support, obviously, but she would leave us kids with my dad. Um, and she would always insist on having the nicest house, like the nicest neighborhood we could afford. Our yard was always ill maintained, but we would live in a very nice house with a yard with weeds. And so the only house with weeds in the entire, like, we'd live on a golf course in Palm Desert. It would be like the only house with weeds. I don't think that house even had weeds because the yard was made of so many rocks it didn't have them. But in Costa Mesa, when we lived next to South Coast Plaza, we were like the house that didn't mow their lawn as often as back then. The homeowners association wouldn't really get you much. Mm, not really. So when I was a child, my mother, who's a genius, of course, would go off to college for half the week. She would live with her friends, she would party, and then she would come back 3 or 4 days a week. And when she was home, every single one of us, my dad, me, all the children, we all just wanted to make sure she would come back the next week. So my dad would take us out to dinner with my mom at as the center of attention. We all got to eat, but mama's there. It's mama's dinner. And what else? I would prepare the children during the week so that she wouldn't reject them and refuse to come back next week by teaching them how to act, finding their unique talents, having them finding what they were best at, casting them in a role, working them into it, whether it was a skit, a play, or a tiny skit even. And they would have to have it right by the time my mom came back. Because there was always that threat that if these children were not up to par, she may not return. And I love her. I love my mom. I'm so proud she went to college during the week. What kind of mother would stay home all week long with their children? What a bad example. And so, someone under brain control, you can't blame them for it. They were probably under mind control if they did it. Anyway, she'd come home and I taught my brother, this is not politically correct, but I taught my little brother, we had watched some films of people in a mental hospital, some documentaries. And you know how the people, like, how they shake, there's a certain look they get in their eyes. And I have my brother Toby. I worked with him until he was able to sustain what we called the traumatized man, with the traumatized man stare, which I've seen many directors actually use it. They use a modified version of it, to where my mom, who is so picky about entertainment, so picky, would go into hysterics. She thought it was fucking unreal, unreal. I could get my brother to dress as a female and completely change his persona and his name. And I had a younger sister, Jenny, and what I would test it out on is that Jenny knew she was going to be tricked, okay? Because we would do this every so often. So she would be like, you tricked me 6 months ago. I'm not going to do it again. I know it's my brother. But what I would do is I would stand kind of behind my sister where my brother could see me, and I would direct my brother on, and I would work with him ahead of time on how to handle this stuff, right? But I would keep my eyes on him, and he would say, like, act until it would usually take 2 or 3 hours, and then she'd let her guard down. She'd start playing with Legos with little Sarah, and the next thing you know, as soon as she was convinced, Toby and I would drop on the floor and start rolling in laughter, and my sister would start crying, and she would like, not again! Because it would be like the new neighborhood child who, because back in those days, a new kid in the neighborhood might knock on the door and say, are there any little girls here to play with? Children don't do that anymore. But in Orange County or Palm Desert, in an upper middle class neighborhood, it's not out of the question that a new little girl would say, are there some new little girls in your household that we can play with? And so I feel that when I was in a possession incident that nobody will really believe me about, but I still remember it. They still utilized the skill set. Where I was trapped in a cult, quite frankly, but I was a pastor's wife, and I was used to direct the director of outreach and co-director of outreach. And one of the job of the director of outreach is to organize the skits, the plays, the raps, the concerts, talent hunt the streets, find people who are talented, get them in there, get them in the choir, get them in the fucking acting crew. Even if the acting crew busts into Walmart and does a skit in front of the people at Walmart, then says what church they're from and runs, yes, it was a cult. And so at any rate, I was directing again, and then even though I wasn't myself, my ex-husband was raised on a mountain with like 4 different people near the Trinity River in Klamath. It's up in the middle of nowhere. And he's very much a narcissist, but he had no social skills because he was raised alone in the mountains. And essentially, he couldn't preach. Every other word that came out of his mouth was dude, and his vocabulary lacked the words that it needed. But before we got married, the part of me that was there was like, hey, I need to know if you're really going to want to be an evangelist or not. Because if you really want to be an evangelist, I'll train you, right? Like you'll become an evangelist, or you'll become a pastor. And he was like, I really want to do it. So I was like, all right. Don't blame this on me, because other parts of my personality were completely unaware of what was going on. And other parts, though, literally, and children, my adult children watched this and can attest, I wrote 80% of the sermon, 80% of every sermon that ever went across out of my ex-husband's pulpit was written by me, not someone else. They watched it, so they know. Not only that, but I would direct him. So like if he would come up with an outline, he'd come up with an idea, and then he would bring it to me, and he'd be like, okay, let's go through it. And he would ask me to go through, just like you'd bring something to your whatever, who, like, I don't know, if you had a producer or if you had a director, right? So he'd bring it to me, a script writer or something. He'd bring me his ideas, and then I'd say, okay, well, and I'd help him figure out certain parts of it, and give him like rabbit trails, and then he'd have to come back with it again until he had something. He had to come up with something. Like if he had an idea and there was no hook in it, I would have to help him find the hook in the sermon first, because every sermon has to have that piece of magic. There's a hook moment that I can't really describe, but if it doesn't have it, it doesn't have it. This sermon's not going to work. So, um, so he wasn't very good at finding the hook, but he was really good at acting, and he's a really good comedian. So once I got the sermon, so like if you ever watch those movies where there's the guy playing the guitar, like, and he's saying poetry to some girl, she thinks that the words are coming from him, but they're actually coming from the guy in the bushes. So the whole congregation is listening to sermons that I've written. Not only did I write them, but I would tell him which jokes to tell. And I'd be like, take up that style you used in the restaurant when you made the joke with the chips. All right, take that, redo that. Now physically act it out. And I would have him act it out in front of me. So he acted out his fucking sermons in front of me. Just like my siblings did. With success. We had haunted houses. When I was a kid, no wonder this cult appealed to me, because we got to do a haunted house every year and work with like actors and people who are really gung-ho about what they were doing. And like when I was a kid, I had my brother and stuff, and I made a haunted house, and we charged money for it, man. And so the director streak, when I watch a movie or when I watch anything, say like I watched The Joker, right, with Heath Ledger. Before I watched the review of it, where they talk about what was going on behind the scenes, I could tell when the actress, when he's got the knife at her throat and the thing, and I was like, she's really scared. She's actually looking around for the director and other people to make sure this is okay, because she's not sure if she's okay right now. And like there's this moment in her face, and I could see it. Then when I went and watched the reviews, she describes exactly what I saw going on with her, and the directors did. And I was like, I could see it going on with her, because as a director, I could see she hit that moment where she was like, where's the director? What's going on? And and so another example, Little House on the Prairie. I watched Little House on the Prairie. I'm watching Little House on the Prairie. I get to like, I can't remember. I think it was like season 3 episode something such. It was a couple summers ago. And all of a sudden, the look on Laura Ingalls' face is not the same. And it's not just a puberty thing. It's this episode. And I go, oh my God, they switched fucking directors on her. And whoever this director was, this shithead, you know, I was like, who is this guy? I know they switched directors on her in this one. So I go in there, and they're like, yeah, they brought in a different director for Laura Ingalls, one that they didn't use barely ever for her for that particular episode. And I was like, I could see the work of the director. Like that. I could tell there was a different director. Bam. Just like that. I can see the work of the director. I can see the handling of a director. I can see where a director directed someone. I can see when an actor is looking for their director. I can see the imprint of what you would call discipleship or spiritual mentorship, or an impartation of spirit that happens between a director and a mentee. So for like in the case of Wicked, the movie, the black lady who plays the green-skinned witch, I could, while the whole time I'm watching the movie, what I'm studying is her handlers, because I can see their work. So I'm watching Dana Carvey. So there's my skill, there's my background. I'm watching Dana Carvey, a recent skit, 2013-ish. No, it was later than that. Really recent. And last few years, I have to take a shit, man. I may have to climb out of my cute tent here and come back. I can't even make the point. I gotta run. I'll be back. Hold up, guys. Yeah, my second has been won award money, and people leave in the audience over something I wrote for it. I thought about it before. I was like, you could write like stuff for other people, like their speeches and shit. And I was like, I've kind of already done it. Twice for Two of my husbands. One was a pastor. The other one was a fucking college grad. All right. Oh, look, there are people because we went to the bathroom and there was no one here before. Okay, so Dana Carvey, back to the story. So I'm watching a recent Dana Carvey, and all I was gonna say is that if you listen to, I listened with the Hunter Biden, it's the Hunter Biden skit, and if you listen to it without watching it, it's perfectly executed. You know, perfect doesn't mean perfect, it means within the range. But then when you watch it, you see where Dana Carvey, it's not that she's letting the character, he's letting the character of the church lady in its strict slip. It's that he's not, he's trying to play her the way she was played when she was younger. And what he needs to do is think about church women as they get older. Think about how the church lady would become even more eccentric, how she would express her age. She would even be funnier, right? But the trick is you can't play her like you played her when she was young because it's going to exhaust you. You have to play because you have to like literally go to some churches and look at some older church ladies and up your church lady ante, because as the church lady ages, she's going to have more quirks and more issues. You see what I'm saying? All right.